There's a moment in every survivalist journey when you start to realize something uncomfortable. All the modern gear, the tactical tools, the multi-tools, the filtered water bottles and the bug-out bags give a false sense of confidence. Because the moment you strip away the electricity, the gasoline, the grocery stores and the banks, you realize how few people today actually know how to survive within a city. And oddly enough, the people who understood it best weren't soldiers, engineers or preppers. It was the generation that survived the Great Depression. They weren't training for disaster. They were living through a slow-moving collapse where money had no weight, supply chains vanished, jobs disappeared, and families had to make do in crowded, chaotic urban environments with almost no resources. What they left behind wasn't theory. It was practical, day-to-day improvisation that allowed normal people to stay fed, warm, clean and safe in conditions most modern urban residents wouldn't endure for a week. And there's one hack from that era so practical, so adaptable and so effective for urban survival that if you learn nothing else today, it will still fundamentally change your self-reliance strategy. Depression-era urban resilience, really came from turning every household item into multi-use infrastructure. Folks just had to make do with what they had, and nothing went to waste. The biggest misunderstanding about Depression-era living is that people survived because they had big homesteads or open farmland, but honestly, most didn't. Millions lived in cramped apartments, tenements and old houses with unreliable heat and, no disposable income at all. Their survival advantage came from the ability to repurpose ordinary items into tools that replaced whole modern systems. The core trick was simple but profound. Nothing in the home was allowed to serve only one purpose. A tin can wasn't trash. It was a stove, a lantern, a waterproof container, a seed cup, or even a grease catcher. A wool coat wasn't just a garment. It was bedding, insulation around a drafty window, or padding for a broken chair. Sheets of newspaper were insulating layers inside clothing, fire starters, temporary floor padding, and sometimes even emergency shoe liners. Modern survivalists often, overpack because they forget this mindset. They believe resilience comes from having, a tool for each job. Depression-era survival teaches the opposite. Resilience comes from learning to convert one item into many solutions. That single shift makes urban survival dramatically more achievable because it reduces the weight and cost of preparedness while increasing actual capability. This is the heart of the lesson. The trick that quietly carried countless families through freezing winters and energy shortages was the creation of small, efficient heating and cooking systems built out of salvage materials. They weren't classic stoves. They were micro-burners designed for tiny spaces, weak fuel sources and absolute scarcity. The system relied on a simple principle. Instead of heating a room, you heat a task. Families heated a pot, a pair of hands, a cup of broth, a small wash basin, or a sleeping space before ever trying to raise the temperature of an entire apartment. A tin can with ventilation holes a brick or two, and a wick made from twisted cloth soaked in animal fat, kerosene residue, or old cooking grease created a controlled flame strong enough for boiling water or reheating food. This method worked because it used the smallest amount of fuel to solve the most immediate need. Boiling water prevented disease. Heating a small pot of beans gave real calories. Warming the inside of a blanket cocoon kept someone alive through the night. It wasn't glamorous, but it was efficient enough to function even when fuel was almost impossible to obtain. So, modern application is actually pretty straightforward. If you happen to live in an urban environment, you can, build a redundancy heat and food system using small-scale, low-fuel devices. These can operate on things like alcohol gel, wood scraps, or even leftover cooking grease. A simple setup, just using a metal can, a stable base and proper ventilation, can provide emergency heat for water purification or even a minimal cooking flame. It's legal in many places, just as long as it's used on balconies or in well-ventilated outdoor areas. And honestly, it ensures you're not dependent on the grid during crises. People today think of food storage as, massive buckets of rice or crates of canned goods. But really, Depression-era families didn't have the space or the money for that sort of thing. Instead, they practiced a system of, constant micro-preservation. Leftovers were never discarded, not ever. Vegetable scraps were turned into broth, and fat was saved as the foundation of countless meals. Even tiny windowsills, believe it or not, became growing stations for green onions, herbs, and small vegetables. This approach is, deeply relevant to urban survival now. Not everyone has a balcony or yard, but nearly everyone has a few square feet of indirect sunlight. If you apply the Depression mindset, you stop treating food as a disposable commodity and, you start treating every scrap as a potential asset. The most powerful takeaway isn't the stoves, the micro-gardens, the multi-use tools, or the makeshift systems. It's the mindset. Every Depression-era survivor built routines that strengthened their position inch by inch. They practiced frugality, skillfulness, repair, and adaptation every day long before crisis struck. And, because of that, when crisis did arrive, nothing about their life suddenly broke. Modern urban survival enthusiasts can, adopt the same model by turning one or two daily actions into self-reliance habits. Learning to repair clothing, saving cooking fat, growing a few herbs, or practicing low-fuel cooking once a week creates a skill set that grows quietly in the background until it becomes second nature. If this breakdown of Depression-era urban survival helped you rethink resilience and self-reliance, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and share the video. Backyard Wisdom is built on practical historical strategies with real-world value, and your support keeps these lessons alive for everyone who needs them.